Hello and welcome to this episode of Trash to Track. In this episode I'm going to be looking at this Hornby A3 that I picked up as a non-runner, which has got a nice weathering job that's been done by the Model Centre, or TMC. Now I wouldn't have normally bought this, but it's an A3 with a Great Northern tender and it's got smoke deflectors, and I don't actually have one of these models in this condition. The front is damaged, the body shell is actually broken there. So I believe this may have been dropped on the floor at some point. You can see the TMC plaque underneath there. But the wheels on the Loco part appear to turn freely. And here is the, like I said, the GNR tender with the coal rails on. So it does look relatively smart. The weathering is done to a very good degree, although there are some scratches on it. Here's the broken buffer beam front piece. I'm going to have to try and repair this later, because it's also missing a pair of lamps, but we'll sort that out. So as I said, sold to me as a non-runner, believed to be DCC fitted as well. So I'm going to give it a quick battery test to see if there's any life at all. And testing it on the track, there was nothing. It is absolutely, utterly dead. Now I do like these A3s. Like I said, it's a bit different to Flying Scotsman, as this one's been weathered into a condition that they would have been seen in the late 60s. A few scratches on it, like I said, but I will touch those up when I get the airbrush out. The important thing is that none of the valves seem to be bent. The wheels are a little bit draggy because of the pickups. But everything seems to be okay, despite having had some frontal damage. So the motor, ring-filled motor's in the tender, so popping the tender top off, eventually it comes off, and you can see immediately why it's a non-runner. One of the pickup wires has come off. It's also been chipped with the two original metal screws. Now I really do not recommend this, because you can insulate those brush retainers as much as you like, but one tiny short circuit will blow that decoder, because power will be going directly to it instead of directly to the motor bits on the decoder instead of through the pickup. So I really don't like that. And it's been insulated with a bit of foam, I think, or plasticard, whatever that is. So I'm going to take this apart and service it and see if this chip's any good. I couldn't see any visual damage. I did have a look just there. There's no burn marks or anything, so I don't know if it's blown or not. To remove the motor, I just simply insert a flat bladed screwdriver and twist, and that should be sufficient to just pop the motor out like that. And there's the decoder, and then I'm going to take off the wheels and I'm going to unscrew these brush retainers. Now if you do this on a ring-filled motor of this design, put your thumb over the brush retainer, because the springs will push them out and the springs will go flying across the room and you will lose them if you're not careful. So yeah, that has been insulated, but I really don't like using the metal screws because it's just too risky in my opinion. So I'm going to replace that with a 2.5 or an M2.5 plastic screw. So the brushes come out easy enough, the brush springs, sorry, but the brushes themselves are stuck in the keeper plate, as is normal. And I've just noticed that this model is also fitted with one of those stupid cast alloy pinion gears, so hopefully that hasn't failed. I'm also going to remove the wheels from this model to give everything a thorough clean. One thing I did notice when taking it apart was, although the TMC's really done a good job on the weathering, there's quite a lot on the wheel treads. And there's also a lot of dirty oil and grease around this motor block, as you can see on that cotton bud. So cotton bud with meths has just cleared all that away. So I'm just going to unclip the motor faceplate by removing these two plastic clips in the back here. Just pushing this small flat bladed screwdriver will help unclip that. Then turning the model around, you can see it's coming apart. Gentle leverage on there and it removes, and that brush is well and truly stuck in there. There is quite a bit of gunk on the brushes, even though the commutator looks pretty clean. You can see some marks around the join, so I'm going to clean all that off. And there does seem to be a lot of old oil around this. I don't know if it's been over oiled in the past. To remove the gears, I just remove this brass keeper at the back here. That comes off and the gears simply lift away, although again congealed oil is holding those in place, so this really did need a service before it was fit for duty again. And then looking at that alloy pinion gear, I just gently try and move it with a screwdriver. Now that is stuck fast, It's not loose like they are commonly, so I'm going to leave it be for now, but I will order a brass replacement just in case this fails in the future, because they are prone to failing and then the motor just spins. But I'm going to clean all this housing up again, cotton bud and meths, just to remove all that congealed oil and grease. There is quite a lot on it, to be honest. I think it's a mixture of oil and grease and overspray from the weathering, if I'm honest with you. And then I'm going to clean the commutator faceplate because there are some burnishes on it. Now, first of all, I tried some contact cleaner on a cotton bud, and that got the most of it off. But to get those burnish marks off, I actually used some Brasso, and you only need a very tiny amount of this. Now, if you do use Brasso on any parts in the model, you just use it like I'm doing here. Just rub it on the brass, but make sure you clean it thoroughly afterwards because it will leave a residue if you don't clean it, and that defeats the object of trying to clean with it. So I just polish the brass parts up and then give it another wipe over with some contact cleaner. Pop that brush out there and clean all this up. Apologies if you've seen me service Ringfield motors in the past. I do it as a matter of course because somebody might just tune in just to watch this video, and if I skip any part of it, they're going to miss out. So the motor faceplate is clipped back on and everything's nice and clean. And now I'm going to turn my attention and just clean all the gears up, just get rid of all this old lubrication that's stuck on these. Again, cotton bud with some contact cleaner on it this time. I think when I did this overhaul I was running low on mess, so I just sprayed a bit of contact cleaner on the cotton buds. A bit of Labelle 106 grease on the gear spindles ready for reassembly. So it does need some lubrication because remember we've just cleaned all the old stuff away. Not that it was any good, it was horrible and sticky. But the gears go back on, smaller ones at the bottom, and the bigger one with the cast small gear goes at the top, with the cast small gear facing down. Brass retaining clip back in. That clips in and then holds all the gear train in place. Turn it with my fingers. Everything's good. Everything's turning nicely as it should. So I'm just going to clean all the axles. The axles are quite dirty, and I'm going to clean all the wheel treads as well before reassembling the wheels into the motor housing. And then once everything's clean, a very small drop of oil onto those brass bearing parts that go through the motor block. Just because the wheels are metal and they're spinning in the bearings, it will need some tiny bit of lubrication. Now you push the wheels through like that, and then what I do is with the cotton bud just wipe off any excess oil that may have been pushed through onto the ends of the axles, and then the wheels with the traction tyres are pushed back on, and once they're pushed back on I check the gauge to 14.3 or 14.4 mil with a set of digital calipers to make sure that the back-to-backs are correct. Here I've got some a cotton bud with some meths on, and I'm just cleaning the brushes up, cleaning all that carbon deposit. That goes back in there. The brushes do have a small nipple on the top where the spring sits over. Make sure that is facing upwards. It just helps with the seating of the spring. The springs are on a cocktail stick, and I've just sprayed these with contact cleaner to clean them. And then the cocktail stick actually helps me just drop them straight over the brush there, look, just like that. Just like that. So there we go. That's one brush in. And there's the other brush. Now I'm just going to test that motor. I don't recommend doing this, but I'm just going to put the battery terminals on the springs themselves. And you can see there that the motor's spinning, so that means it's all working correctly and properly clean. I usually wait to put the brush terminals on to do that, but because there's a decoder soldered to it, I thought I'd just gently test it via the springs. You also have to lubricate that up there, where the motor spindle comes through that plastic shaft, because comes through the plastic motor housing, because when you get screechy Ringfield motors, it's this part here, it's where that's dry and it's rubbing against the plastic. So a small bit of oil and then a bit of grease rubbed in, just to rub that round like that with a cocktail stick, ensures that that is thoroughly lubricated and won't make that horrible screeching noise. Now this brush retainer can go back on with the metal screw. The reason this side can be held on with the metal screw when it's digitally fitted is the screw only goes through the plastic housing, and it actually sits in a void in the metal casing, so there's no danger of any short circuits with that one. That's the right hand screw. The left hand screw, I use an M2.5mm plastic screw, and the black pickup wire is actually wrapped around it before it's tightened up, as you can see in this picture. And then that ensures good contact with the motor block to ensure reliable pickup. So that's repaired the DCC wiring on this model. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to reassemble the motor into the chassis. I'm just pointing there to show you that wiring, because if I know the motor works, if the chip's dead, I can just change it. But testing it with a power lead from a battery, you can see there that it's running. So there's one connector to the tender pin, one to the pickup wheel. So that decoder is actually good. It just seems that the wire had come off. So I clip the motor back in place, and that will snap in place when it's all correctly aligned. Just like that again. And then the decoder and the wiring can all be sorted out and tidied up. Now I'm going to use a bit of black tack just to put that decoder there. You can see there's the remnants of an old sticky pad there, but the stickiness has long since gone. So I just use a bit of black tack, put the decoder just there. Look, I'm going to tidy the wires up again with a small amount of black tack on top of the motor block. And then once that's done, the top of the tender shell can be pushed on, and we'll turn our attention to the Loco part and the broken body shell. Now, what I've done here is I've glued this on with some araldite. I've removed the body shell from the chassis, and I've glued this on with some araldite and also reinforced it, or so I think, from underneath. I've also cleaned the wheels and the wheel backs, and I've also dropped a small amount of oil because these wheels on here do actually sit in proper bearings. Now what I did notice was this is a newer model front, and the tender doesn't have that pickup part for the top tender drawbar pickups. It's an older tender with a newer model front. But this is where it went wrong slightly. There's the old buffer, which is quite badly bent, and I got a new one out of my spares. I've got several of these salvaged off models in the past. And when I went to push it in, bang! And I'll do that in slow motion, and God, did this annoy me. I pushed the buffer in, and the buffer beam snapped again, and I was properly pissed off. But what happened was I did this on a very hot day, and I don't think that I mixed the araldite correctly. I don't think I put enough hardener in it because that glue on there was still slightly tacky. So this is the next day, and I'd mixed up a new batch of 2-part epoxy resin, and this time it held solid. So I had mixed the glue wrong. It just set the restoration back a day or two. But it's now on there nice and firm, and I'm going to tidy that front end up in a minute, and I'll show you that. Now, in relation to these pickups, I wanted to utilise these, so what I did was I got some really, really thin brass and actually made a pickup plate for the tender. I did that off camera, just cutting the brass to size. It was fixed on there with super glue. A hole was drilled through, and a black wire that was soldered onto that. And then it was soldered onto the black pickup wire that we sandwiched between that plastic screw earlier. And then if I put this upside down now, I will show you that the Loco wheels are now fully picking up power, whereas before it would have only been on one side. So I've upgraded the model slightly, and it will be better for DCC running. And you can see there just how thin that little bit of brass is there. But that's what I did with that. Now the front I'm going to tidy up. I'm going to try and weather this in a bit. And I'm going to do it off camera because I couldn't concentrate properly with the camera stand being in the way. But just giving it a dust off there because I have moved some of the epoxy resin. It has set solid now, but I will have a look at that and try and weather that in a moment. Before I do that though, I put the Loco on the bench complete and give it a battery test, and you can see now it's running lovely, and hopefully it shows off just how nice that weathering is. I've also fitted a small NEM coupling to the front in the front bogie there using a spare screw and a coupling that I had, because as people may not know, my outdoor railway is a preserved line and it's end to end, so the Loco has to run round. So I needed a coupling, but it does look nice. The scratches I will touch up with the airbrush, but I do like this weathered A3. It's nice to see a weathered steam engine. I don't have many weathered steam engines. And again, this was a few hours later. Now, I hope you'll agree, I've touched the weathering up as best I can on the front to disguise that crack. The camera is really cruel with the close-up zoom, but I hope you'll agree I've managed to weather that in. And in my eyes, it just looks like general wear and tear and batteredness that the real Locos would have had. And there's just something about an A3 with German deflectors. I think it just sets that Loco off. It just sets the look off really nice. If you've got an engine or anything that needs repairing, DCC fitting, or you'd like to donate anything, please email me at dansmodelrailways@gmail.com. I'm looking at it sent over, and who knows, if it's a Loco, it may even feature in an episode all of its own. So I'm going to leave you now with the A3 running around the garden with a lengthy van train. I didn't think putting a Loco this dirty on a prestigious passenger train would suit it, so I thought an express van train would be more suited to the weathering on this model. So this DCC fitted ring field, you can see it runs really well on DCC. For those of DCC users, I have it set on speed step 128, and there is quite a lot of control, and it does run really well. I'm so glad I didn't pass this model up like I was going to. And I really like this shot here of me pacing it, just watching those side rods fly around as it whizzes along with its van train. I will touch the weathering up when I get my airbrush equipment set up again, but I did this over the weekend where it was really hot, and I just didn't want to do it because I paint in acrylics and they would have just dried too quickly. So thanks again for watching Trash to Track. Please like, share and subscribe, and I'll catch all you guys in the next video. Bye for now.